Hello everybody, here we are today recapping a lot of the crazy trades during the trade period, especially towards the trade deadline and getting in all that. But before we get started, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. Being said, let's get on into it. So I know I said that I wasn't going to put out a video tonight, so as you can see, I lied. I'll talk about that a little bit later towards the end of the video because for the people that are, not regulars, they probably just want to hear about the trade. So anyway, kicking it off with the biggest trade, of course, was the Mikko Rantanen sign-in trade with Dallas in Carolina. This is massive as Mikko is yet to play a game with the Stars, yet gets a lot of money over the course of 8 years. This is risky, but for Mikko, you say maybe this is going to end up being worth it. But I think at the same time, too, sad to see Logan Stankoven as well as some first-round picks leaving for Carolina. I think this is more of a head-scratcher, not just because, they ended up trading away Mikko, who's supposed to be the guy that got them over the hump this year. It was more about hearing the time that they kind of just got caught up trying to get a deal done and ship away Mikko Rantanen, where they weren't able to get some other deals that they might have liked to do. So ultimately, this is probably looking to be more of a win for Dallas, especially in the short term, as they are gearing up to be maybe first-time champions in this era of Stars hockey. But at the same time, I think we will be looking at this over the course of the next few years, seeing how he gels, because one thing I did want to highlight, he had a little bit of a scoring slump in Carolina. If that transfers over, especially early on for Dallas, it might be a little bit disheartening. But again, if this team gets relatively healthy before the start of the playoffs, you can expect big things. And then you had Brad Marchand getting traded, and this one felt weird, but it felt like this one might have a little bit of legs to the story, as you have a player that's done a lot in his time with the Spooked Bees, and you didn't think that this would just kind of be thrown around lightly. And as we get closer and closer, I did wonder a little bit more, like, are we actually going to see him get traded? And the answer to that is yes. And this is actually kind of funny because it's fitting that the Rat goes to a place where the Rats are known. And in this case, I normally am kind of behind with everybody else, will kind of be ahead of the game and they'll kind of process these things. But as soon as he got traded, I thought, well, that's kind of funny they ended up there. And I think that for that, he is in a good spot with the team. It's, from a marketing perspective, great. From a perspective of a team that likes to win, which he likes to do as well too, and that isn't afraid of getting underneath your skin, Brad ended up in this case in a really good spot. Now, I will say, I was talking about how Brad might be able to become a hero being traded away from Boston, being in a different jersey. I can tell you right now, him being in Florida is not going to do that at all. But this could actually be a win-win-win scenario. Boston, I believe, will get at least a second-round pick out of this. If the Panthers end up winning 2 rounds or more, this becomes a first-round pick. So maybe a first-round pick for them. And then, of course, the Panthers get a guy that, if he comes back and is healthy, could play a big part of a run for them, maybe going back-to-back as part of that Seth Jones trade. And if you're Boston, maybe, just maybe, you could see Brad end up signing back in free agency, and you could say we get a first-round pick out of just having another team rent him. And then another thing we can talk about is the Nelson and Coyle acquisitions by the Colorado Avalanche. This has been kind of a crazy year for the Avs. They start out the year winless, one of the last teams in the league to be winless, I think, through their first 5 games. They end up trading Mikko Rantanen not that long ago, and you are just like, man, Colorado, they want to win, but it is unfortunate to see somebody like Moose end up getting shipped out. And then they go out there and they do this. This is cool to see, but I think at the same time, too, kind of understanding the amount of time, Nelson played with the Isles and kind of the role that he played with that team. It is unfortunate, but I'm hoping, again, kind of a win-win scenario. Isles getting a good return, and then, of course, for Nelson, this is going to be interesting to see if he can maybe go out there and get that cup with the Avs. And I think it would be tough for Islanders fans, but saying maybe it's nice to see him go out there and hoist it. And then, of course, with Coyle, again, another acquisition that could play a big role for this. I think the biggest thing that a lot of people are complaining about is Nelson is a free agent, I believe, after this season. Coyle is a free agent after next season. So they're giving up a decent amount, and if things backfire here and they don't go on a run, you would look at this and say, for the Avs, big time ouch there. And you also understand what I've kind of talked about before, too, during the course of this channel. Colorado has only advanced out of the second round on 1 occasion, when they won the Stanley Cup. Now, that's a heck of a time to go out there and do it, but if they lose again early, then this would be just a tough deal because they've paid some guys, obviously in Makar and whatnot with these players. Not a terrible amount of money, but they're invested, and if they can't even get out of the second round on multiple occasions, this is just a very odd situation where it's like, we got a cup, so things are good, but people in the short term, I think especially, are going to say this is not fun, even though it has recently been pretty fun. Then, of course, we can talk about the Bruins and the end of the era that they have there. You see, of course, Marchand. You see, of course, Koya. You see Carlo traded away. And it is odd. It's part of a continuation of roster turnover. Again, Chara, Rask, and Bergeron were all playing for this team not that long ago. But the league is not forgiving, and it just keeps on going day by day, where teams don't resemble anything of what you remember. And I think for the Spook Bees, they really put themselves in this spot. I don't know how many they had lost over their past 10, but I think they had lost 6 out of 7. And just drama entered the season for the Bruins, and it's tough. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to get wins. And this is an organization that has done that for like 20 years and has been a consistent playoff team, if not a side that can go out there and go on multiple deep runs. 3 trips to the Stanley Cup Final since 2011, mind you. 2011, 13, and then 19. Probably realistically should have won 19, but we'll avoid kind of talking about that. Anyway, for the Bruins, it is kind of a unique situation because you get 3 players back. I believe one of those being Casey Middlestat. And then I think they got 3 picks out of all this as well, too. So maybe things work out where you get a little bit rejuvenated in terms of players that can jump in there, have more success. Maybe Middlestat has more success in Boston than in Colorado. And then kind of what we talked about earlier with Brad possibly coming back from Florida. Just one of those deals that is a quick influx for this team. And at the end of the day, they're not totally out of the playoff picture. They probably are out of it. But it would kind of be ironic if they ended up trading away a lot of these guys and they made it. They won't, but I think this will also kind of be a painful playoff for them to watch. Brad and then, of course, Carlo being traded away to division rivals, having the realistic chance of seeing those teams go on deep runs while you miss and have to watch on your couch is not fun, especially for a fan base that has come to love watching Bruins hockey in the postseason. Even though I gotta be honest, I think that they could probably write a whole journal over the past 20 years about all the times that they've come up short when they're hoping for more. And then I wanted to talk about a biggest loser that maybe some people aren't talking about as much. And this is not necessarily totally related to solely the team, but I think the Minnesota Wild have to be watching this trade deadline period and be very, very frustrated. You saw, of course, the Dallas Stars get Mikko. You saw the Avalanche go out there and make moves, and you realized that the Winnipeg Jets didn't just sit on their hands either. They went out there and did some things, and they're first in the league. And Minnesota is now in a wild card spot, and they looked like maybe they could be a 3 seed out there for the course of the year. In fact, earlier in the year, through their first 25 games, it looked like maybe they could win their division. Now I don't want to say the mood, but it certainly does feel like from a non-Minnesota fan perspective that the writing is kind of on the wall about another potential first-round exit. And I know that they went out there, they got Gustav Nyquist and whatnot, but compared to some of these other deals, obviously there's kind of a gap. And I think for the Wild, this is not a trade period where you say, oh yeah, we are really ready for the playoffs now. It's more of, it's going to be a dogfight, it's going to get ugly, and we just have to find a way to get through all this mess and actually try to at least get to the second round. I don't know, because they're a good team. They are. They're, obviously better than what they were last year, but there is still a clear divide between being what they are and what the top tier teams are, especially out west. And I guess it's good to not be so short-sighted where you say, well, now we have to go out there and try to top those other teams. But, yeah, they're fourth in their division, and they will securely make the playoffs with the way things are going with Calgary and Vancouver, but first-round exit. It's pretty familiar in Minnesota. Now, as for some other things that we can just go off on a tangent here, Mitch Marner has the potential to do the funniest thing that I can think of, and that would make the Maple Leafs fan base so irate. So reportedly, Marner was, kind of talked to by Maple Leafs management, said, hey, what are your thoughts on signing an extension in the future and whatnot, and what do you see your future being as? Because we kind of are looking at a possibility of trading you to Carolina if you move your no movement clause, or you waive your no movement clause, and we try to go out there and sign Mikko Rantanen. He basically goes out and says, no, I'm going to, stay here. I want to try to be here for the future, sign an extension. That may be true. Again, he is from Ontario, but at the same time, how funny would it be if he left him in free agency? And I know people will say, oh, we don't need him anyway, considering all the playoff runs. But even if he left and people say they didn't need him, they know that they could have possibly gone out there and gotten Mikko Rantanen. So Mitch could do something that I think would make all of us laugh. And it would be kind of a, stick it to the man moment in that case. But I don't know. I think he could stay with Toronto. So we'll see what happens out there and how that plays out. Another team that I wanted to talk about, another scenario that I want to talk about here, is the Edmonton Oilers. They kind of missed out on the whole Mikko Rantanen trade too, and I don't think they get to do nearly as much as they would have liked. And again, out west, teams like Dallas and Colorado really trying to gear up for the playoffs. The Oilers are still a good team, and I don't think they kind of get thrown in there with some other teams that will probably be below them by the end of the year. Maybe teams like LA and Minnesota where you feel like, oh, they're headed off for that first round exit. You know that there is still plenty of game-changing talent, series-changing talent for the Oilers. But I do think that for Edmonton, maybe you're hoping to actually get something big kind of swung, and I talked a little bit ago about maybe the John Gibson trade. If goaltending comes back to hurt this team in the playoffs, maybe we could talk about, oh, what if they had done this or what if they had done that? I tried to see, but I think Bowman was the only one that I could think of that they ended up trading to acquire here. I don't know. So keep an eye out that for the Oilers. And then the final thing was Peter Mrazek. He ended up getting traded to Detroit. He started his career there, and I would love to see him help this team get back to the playoffs. I got back really big in hockey after not being too involved in sports for a couple of years when I was a kid, right around the very start of his career, if I remember right, where I just got back in it almost like religiously. And I remember watching him a lot for the Red Wings play. So if he could help them kind of get that push to get back into it, because I know they've fallen out of a wild card spot, it would be a fun thing to see, especially because the Red Wings kind of been searching for consistent goaltending. Really wish Cam Talbot would just have like a monster year where he played like almost 80 games and had a .920 save percentage. But anyway, kind of tying back to all this, once a Red Wing, always a Red Wing, I think in some circumstances, and just something that I want to talk about here. And that basically sums up the video. So if you are somebody that's not a regular, you don't have to stick around. But yes, as you guys saw from the community post, just been dealing with a really bad headache the past 2 days. Got a history of those, but it's all right. Ever since I was a kid, just had to deal with those and get through the day. I was supposed to have off work tomorrow, but my boss ended up texting me saying, hey, something came up where somebody else can't work. Can you fill in? I said yes. And I'm like, well, if I'm already going to probably have a headache tomorrow, or who knows how I'll feel, I might as well just record the video now. And then I was going to originally record this yesterday, and then something happened where I got done early with my job. And then basically, if you get done early, you can leave early. But then somebody else had something happen where they were like, do you want to stick around? So that ended up adding like 2.5 hours to my day. So then that kind of got, postponed and sidetracked there. But we were talking about all of these things. I don't know if anybody's watching this, but if you are, and you are a regular, I'm sure you're like, hey, this is like a midnight upload. That's great. So anyway, just if you're new, if you are regular, just know that I appreciate you. And I know that I probably could be putting out better content, but these lights are really just starting to annoy me. So I think that's what I've been battling with for this. But anyway, as always, everybody, please make sure to stay safe. Have a great night, and you love hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.